what's going on, guys? This is Eric from AndroidPIT, and I have in my hands here a phone that lots of people have been waiting to get their hands on. We've been hearing about it a lot in the news. It's of course the long-awaited Samsung Galaxy S3 just arrived here at AndroidPIT. Wanted to give you guys a really quick overall video of what I think of the phone, some of the specs, how it performs, the boot up screen, a couple benchmark tests, and nothing too extensive right now. Today we have lots of people wanting to do tests on the phone, but we will be having it for a while, so let's just jump right into it here. The first thing I can tell you about is the design of the phone. As you can see here, the phone is very, very similar to a Galaxy Nexus. I happen to have mine laying here. If it wasn't for the physical home key right here and this kind of this silver lining that went around it, you would have a very, very difficult time telling the differences in these phones. In terms of thinness and thickness, the Samsung Galaxy Nexus, again, they're going to be very, very close. The Galaxy S3 might actually just be a hair thinner, if you can see that in video there, but the similarities are definitely there. You see the bottom, the power button is still on the side. The volume buttons on both phones are in the exact same spot. On the bottom, of course, you have the slot for the micro USB card, and on the top you have your 3.5 millimeter headphone jack, which is at the bottom of the Galaxy Nexus. Let's just quickly boot this phone up, because I'm sure a lot of you want to see what the user interface looks like. So we'll give it a first boot now. In terms of feel, I can go ahead and tell you guys the phone, people thought it was going to feel really, really cheap whenever they got their hands on it, that it would feel too plasticky. It is surprisingly not the case. The phone has a very, very good weight to it. Design-wise, it feels like a good mixture between the Galaxy Nexus and the HTC One S. As you can see, the phone here is booted up. It's running, it has a live wallpaper on the lock screen, and the boot's here in the TouchWiz. But again, to quickly get into the feel of the phone feels very good. It feels very premium considering that it is made of plastic. It's not too light, it's not too heavy, and I have to admit I was very surprised in terms of the weight and the feel of the phone in your hand. Like the Galaxy Nexus, it has a massive screen. If you can get a look here, if I put the two phones side by side, a bit of a comparison here, you can also see, even though the Galaxy Nexus screen is massive, the Galaxy S3 screen is a bit bigger. And what I really like about the phone, both phones actually, is that these are both actually really, really big phones, but they don't feel like they're too big in your hand. They both fit very nicely in your hand, despite the fact that they have massive screens. And anyone who's a fan of the Galaxy Nexus design, I think will very, very much like the Galaxy S3. So here you can see that we're booted up. The boot time was extremely fast. In terms of the UI and how responsive it is, I have to admit the phone is very, very snappy. I don't see any lag whenever I'm swiping through home screens, whenever I'm popping into the app drawer, whenever I'm going back out. The phone is just very, very zippy, very responsive, and very snappy. We can see, we can rotate it. Oh, that option must not be enabled. Sorry about that. But anyway, yeah, in terms of speed, the phone is definitely very, very fast. It is, we can pop in here to the app drawer. You can see that the app drawer is very much stock Android. Samsung has made a couple changes to it. The biggest change being that the app drawer itself, as you see here, is transparent, which is something that you can see in a lot of third-party launchers like Nova Launcher or Apex. And they've also added the option to have the transparent lock screen. You can pop over to widgets here as well, which is more or less stock Android in this particular style. I must admit, I have never been a fan of TouchWiz, and probably never will be a fan of TouchWiz, but as far as TouchWiz goes, this is definitely a step in the right direction. Next to Sense 4.0, this is probably the nicest skin I've ever saw on an Android device. It's definitely not that bad to look at. I still, of course, prefer stock Android, but for anyone who's considering getting this phone and thought that maybe TouchWiz wouldn't be a good option, you might be a bit surprised. It's actually a really nice looking skin, and one of the best I've seen. This physical hardware button has been a big topic of discussion. Some like it, some hate it. I can tell you now that when actually just putting your thumb over it, it feels it feels good in the sense that it doesn't come too far off the screen. So, I mean, if you gently put your thumb across it, you'll barely even notice that it's there. We have these two virtual buttons here that kind of, whenever you put your hand on them, I could try to get that for the camera, you can put your hand on it and you see they pop up for a second and then they disappear. The one on the left is going to be your menu key to bring up your options. The one on the right is going to be what's going to bring you backwards. Now, I think that Samsung basically did that in terms of it because they didn't want to have 3 physical buttons on the screen. Design-wise, I'm still not a big fan of the button, but it kind of works for the phone. The overall look of the phone with the polish and the material, this button is not getting in the way that much. And like I said before, if they would have kept it without this button and would have had a black model, you'd basically be looking at a Samsung Galaxy Nexus, and I'm sure they didn't want to get those two things confused. I can quickly show you guys what we'll do here is we'll pop into the browser. We'll load the English version of the AndroidPIT website. And as you can see here, the browser is very, very responsive. Now, a big thing about Android phones is that they've never been known to have that awesome pinch to zoom that the iPhone actually has. With this phone, I can actually say that the pinch to zoom is extremely fluid. I mean, just look at that. If you can see that in the camera there, the pinch to zoom on this phone is very, very good. The browser itself is extremely responsive. Scrolling is flawless. We're not seeing a hair of lag. Again, the pinch to zoom is extremely fast. We'll load up a different page. Bam. You can see everything's loaded up. Extremely nice. I'm really surprised at the speed of the actual browser on the phone itself. We can pop back out here to the main screen. You can see that there are a lot of custom Samsung apps installed. If you can get a look at that there, it's going to be the Samsung Video Hub that we learned about when the device was released, Samsung Music, and here we have, you can see the S Suggest, which is a feature that we learned about when Samsung first brought out the phone. I'm not going to get too much into applications this time because we're going to do a bit more of a hands-on review in terms of some of the applications that came with the Galaxy S3. But in terms of specs, just in case anyone forgot, we are looking at Samsung's newest Exynos, however they like to say it, the 4412 quad-core processor. That processor is actually running at 1.4 gigahertz and is a Cortex A9 processor. On the back of the actual device, we have an 8 megapixel camera. There is a micro SD slot there, which is a great addition that we didn't notice in the HTC One X. This happens to be the white 16 gigabyte model. Samsung has made a statement in regards to the blue model saying that availability will be in the next 2 to 3 weeks. It's not an issue that they're having, but there was a quality control something that they wanted to test with the blue one before releasing it to the public. We are expecting to see that released very soon. International availability for this device actually started today. For the US, we are looking at getting it in June. June 20th seems to be the date that's flying around, but it could be July latest that we're actually seeing the device. Now, I ran some benchmarks, and it is some pretty impressive stuff, guys. I'll go ahead and get here to our Antutu benchmark test, and you can actually see what the last score. I put the Nexus, I benchmarked it against the Galaxy Nexus as well. I try to get the score side by side as you can see it. Now, I should tell you my Galaxy Nexus is rooted and running an overclocked processor as well. It came in with 6,997. Even though it was overclocked and rooted, it did nothing in terms of the power compared to this phone. The Galaxy S3 came in at a whopping 12,046 Antutu score, which easily bested the HTC One X. In almost every test that we did, I believe that we did get it at one point up to 11,000. What's interesting enough though is I tested it against my Transformer Prime, which is also Tegra 3, and my Tegra 3 here outdid it with a whopping 13,359, which is a pretty good beating that it took. At the same time, my Prime was rooted and overclocked to 1.8 gigahertz per core, so if you would have gotten it out of the box, it probably would have been a bit of a different result. But benchmark-wise, it certainly is impressive. For gamers, this is going to be a gamer's dream. If you like to game on your phone, there will naturally probably be a few compatibility issues in the beginning, as it always is with new architecture, but once those get ironed out, I can certainly imagine that this phone would just be a sheer delight to play games on. So that's it, guys. This is the Samsung Galaxy S3 user interface. Is just to wrap it up, the user interface here is very slick considering it's TouchWiz and something that I was never a fan of in the past. It is extremely fluid. It is extremely fast. The browser is great. It is running TouchWiz, but it does have a lot of Android stock elements. In terms of design, it feels great. It looks a lot like the Galaxy Nexus with a bit more weight to it. It's very thin. And in terms of benchmarks, we did put it against my dual-core Galaxy Nexus, and it smoked it, although it came out a little lower than a rooted and overclocked Transformer Prime. We're going to have the phone in our office now for a couple of days. We're going to do some extensive reviews and some more tests on it. But for now, you guys get a good look at the basic overview of the phone. And so far, I have to admit that I like what I see. This is Eric from AndroidPIT, and we will be coming at you very, very soon with a lot more tests on this new flagship device from Samsung. See you guys later.